The world has always been hungry for words that heal. Empires rise with laws carved into stone. Kingdoms build themselves upon the commands of kings, and philosophers craft volumes of wisdom meant to shape the human soul. And yet, throughout the course of history, no empire has lasted forever. No philosophy has satisfied every heart, and no law has silenced the ache of loneliness, guilt, and longing for love that resides in each of us. And then, into that longing, there came a voice. It was not the voice of a general commanding an army. It was not the voice of a politician promising peace through power. It was not the voice of a philosopher, lost in theories and debate. It was the voice of a carpenter's son, quiet, unassuming, and yet carrying a weight that shook the very foundations of the world. That voice said words so simple, so pure, and yet so revolutionary that the echo of them has never faded. Love one another as I have loved you. It was, and still remains, the most beautiful message ever given to mankind. Not because it was complicated, but because it pierced through the complications of life and went straight to the human heart. When Jesus spoke, people stopped in their tracks. Fishermen dropped their nets. Tax collectors left their wealth behind. The sick and the broken pressed through crowds just to touch him. His words had no armies behind them, and yet kings would one day bow before them. His teaching was not written in scrolls of law, and yet entire nations would be built upon it. What made his message so beautiful? It was not just the sound of his voice, but the reality of his life. Every word he spoke, he embodied. Every truth he taught, he lived. He was not merely a teacher of love. He was the very definition of love in human flesh. As we begin this journey into the most beautiful message from Jesus, we will discover not only the words he spoke, but the life he lived, the sacrifice he made, and the eternal hope he offers. This is not just a message from history. It is a message alive today, waiting to transform anyone who hears it. And so we ask, what is the most beautiful message from Jesus, and what does it mean for us today? A world waiting for hope. The world into which Jesus was born was not a quiet world. It was restless, weary, and waiting. For centuries, people had lived under the shadow of empires: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and finally Rome. One conqueror after another, each promising order, each enforcing peace by the sword. To the rulers, this was called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. But for the common people, especially the Jewish nation, it was not peace at all. It was oppression disguised as order, silence enforced by fear. The streets of Jerusalem bustled with trade, sacrifice, and prayer. Yet beneath the surface lay exhaustion. Generations had recited the promises of prophets, words of a Messiah who would come, who would restore justice, who would bring peace. Mothers taught their children about David, about Moses, about Elijah, about the one who was to come. And every time they saw Roman soldiers on the streets, their longing grew stronger. But it was not only Israel that longed for something more. Across the world, humanity was hungry. The Greeks, with their wisdom, had given philosophy, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, men who asked questions about the soul, truth, and the meaning of life. Yet their answers were never complete. The Romans, with their power, had built roads, cities, and laws. Yet their empire was built on slavery, violence, and fear. The world had knowledge, it had culture, it had armies and kings. What it lacked was hope. Hope for forgiveness, hope for freedom, hope for love that could not be bought or crushed. In that waiting world, people turned to religion. Temples filled with sacrifices, priests recited prayers, rituals became heavier, stricter, more demanding, and yet the ache remained. No amount of sacrifice could wash away guilt completely. No amount of prayer repeated could silence the cry for something deeper. The poor longed for justice. The broken longed for healing. The lost longed for someone to call their name. And so when a man walked along the shores of Galilee saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted," people listened. They leaned in. They followed. because his words sounded like the very thing the world had been waiting for. He spoke of a kingdom, not built with swords or stone, but with love. He spoke of freedom, not from Rome, but from sin. He spoke of peace, not imposed by force, but flowing from hearts reconciled with God. Imagine the people hearing him for the first time. A widow who had been ignored by society, a leper cast out of the village, a soldier weary of violence, a child longing to be seen. To each of them, his voice was not just sound, it was a lifeline. This was the world waiting for Jesus, a world tired of empty promises, a world thirsty for truth, a world desperate for love. And when he came, he brought with him not a sword, but a message, not a kingdom of stone, but a kingdom of hearts, not a law to burden, but a love to set free. The stage of history was ready. Humanity had reached its limit. The silence of centuries had grown unbearable. And then, in the fullness of time, the most beautiful message the world had ever heard was spoken. It was as if all of history had been holding its breath. And in Jesus, the breath of God entered the world again. The core of the message, love. If one were to summarize the entire message of Jesus in a single word, that word would be love. It sounds simple, almost too simple. Love is a word that appears in poems, songs, and stories from every culture. But when Jesus spoke of love, he was not merely echoing human affection or romantic ideals. He was revealing something far deeper, the very heart of God. 1. Love, unlike any other. The world had seen love before. Parents loved their children. Friends loved each other. Lovers pledged their devotion. But that love was often fragile, conditional, and easily broken. Jesus introduced a love that went beyond human limits. He said, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you." These words were not just countercultural, they were revolutionary. In a world built on power, vengeance, and pride, Jesus was calling people to respond with mercy, kindness, and humility. This was not love as emotion, but love as action. Love that gives without demanding return. Love that chooses to serve, even when unrecognized. Love that sees worth in those the world calls worthless. And most striking of all, he himself lived this love. He touched lepers no one else would touch. He spoke with women society ignored. He ate with tax collectors everyone despised. He forgave sinners everyone condemned. Through every action, Jesus showed the world that love was not weakness, but the greatest strength. 2. The commandment of love. At the heart of his teaching was what he called the new commandment, love one another as I have loved you. This was more than an ethical rule. It was a mirror of his own life. As I have loved you, not abstractly, but concretely. His disciples had seen it firsthand, the patience, the forgiveness, the sacrifice. This commandment shifted the entire foundation of religion. No longer was holiness defined only by rituals, laws, or temple sacrifices. True holiness was now measured by love, how one treated others, especially the weak, the poor, the broken. To love God meant to love people. To serve God meant to serve others. To honor God meant to show compassion. This was, and still is, the core of Christianity. Not fear, not rules, not pride, but love. 3. Stories that revealed love. Jesus often told parables, simple stories carrying eternal truths. And again those stories revealed the primacy of love. The Good Samaritan, a man beaten and left for dead. A priest and a Levite, religious men, passed by. But a Samaritan, considered an enemy, stopped, cared for him, and paid for his healing. Jesus asked, who was a neighbor to the man? The answer was clear, the one who showed mercy. Love was greater than social boundaries, greater than religion, greater than prejudice. The prodigal son. A rebellious son wasted his inheritance, ended up in misery, and returned home expecting rejection. Instead, his father ran to embrace him, clothed him, and celebrated his return. Through this story, Jesus showed that God's love is not earned, but freely given, even to those who fail. The lost sheep. A shepherd left 99 sheep to find one that was lost. That image revealed the depth of divine love, a love so personal that no one is forgotten. Through these parables, people realized that love was not optional. It was the very heartbeat of God's kingdom. 4. Love and the cross. But Jesus did not only speak about love, he demonstrated it in the most radical way, the cross. On the night he was betrayed, he washed his disciples' feet, an act reserved for servants. He shared bread and wine, saying it represented his body and blood, given for them. And then he walked into the hands of those who would arrest, mock, and crucify him. Even as he hung on the cross in agony, his words were filled with love. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." This was love in its purest form, giving everything, even life itself, for the sake of others, not because they deserved it, but because love chooses to give. The cross was not defeat, but the ultimate victory of love over hate, forgiveness over sin, life over death. 5. Love that transforms. What makes the message of Jesus so beautiful is not only that he loved, but that his love transforms those who receive it. Peter, once fearful, became bold. Paul, once a persecutor, became a preacher. Mary Magdalene, once broken, became a witness of resurrection. Everywhere his love touched, lives were changed. And even today, millions testify to the same power. Addicts freed, the lonely comforted, the guilty forgiven, the hopeless restored. His love is not a memory of the past. It is a force alive in the present. 6. Why this love is unique. There are many teachings about kindness and compassion in world religions and philosophies. But what makes the love of Jesus unique is this: it flows from the very nature of God. The message of Jesus was not, "Try harder to be good." It was, "Receive the love of God and let it flow through you." This is love rooted not in human willpower, but in divine grace. A love that begins with God, not with us. A love that is stronger than failure, sin, and even death. 7. The beauty of the message. Why do we call this the most beautiful message? Because it answers the deepest cries of the human soul. To the guilty, it says, "You are forgiven." To the broken, it says, "You are loved." To the lonely, it says, "You are not forgotten." To the proud, it says, "Lay down your pride and discover true greatness in serving others." It is a message not of condemnation, but of redemption. Not of despair, but of hope. Not of hate, but of love. And it is not only for the first century, not only for Israel, not only for saints. It is for every person, in every nation, in every age. 8. Living the message. The beauty of this message is not complete until it is lived out. Jesus said, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." The true sign of following him is not power, wealth, or even knowledge, but love. When the hungry are fed, when the sick are cared for, when the stranger is welcomed, when enemies are forgiven, then the world sees the reflection of Jesus. This is why the church, at its best, has been a movement of hospitals, schools, orphanages, and compassion. And when it forgets this love, it loses its soul. 9. A love without end. The love of Jesus does not fade with time. Empires crumble, philosophies shift, cultures change. But his words remain, "Love one another as I have loved you." This is not only the core of his message, it is the heartbeat of eternity. In this part, we have seen that at the very center of Jesus' teaching is love, a love that is active, sacrificial, transforming, and eternal. A love not only spoken but lived and sealed with blood on the cross. This is what makes his message the most beautiful in history, because it reveals that at the core of existence, at the core of God himself, is love. The cross, love in action. If the words of Jesus revealed the heart of God, then the cross revealed the depth of that heart. For in the cross, Love was not spoken, it was demonstrated. Not imagined, not theorized, but embodied in suffering and sacrifice. 1. The weight of the cross. To the Roman world, the cross was a symbol of shame. It was reserved for the worst of criminals, rebels, and outcasts. Crucifixion was brutal, public, and meant to crush not only the body but also the dignity of the condemned. It screamed a message. This person is worthless. This person is cursed. And yet, Jesus, innocent, pure, beloved of the Father, chose this very path. He had healed the sick, fed the hungry, forgiven the guilty, and calmed storms. Crowds adored him, but when he refused to bow to political pressure, when he refused to take up the sword, when he proclaimed a kingdom not of this world, the leaders turned against him. Betrayed by a friend, abandoned by his followers, unjustly condemned, mocked, scourged, crowned with thorns. He carried the cross through the streets of Jerusalem. Each step was heavy not only with wood, but with the weight of humanity's brokenness. 2. Love in every step. At every stage of his suffering, love was present. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when he prayed in agony, "Not my will, but yours be done," it was love that surrendered. Love for the Father and love for the world. When Judas betrayed him with a kiss, he still addressed him, "Friend." Love did not vanish, even for the betrayer. When Peter denied him, his eyes met Peter's. Not in rage, but in sorrowful compassion. Love grieved, but did not reject. When soldiers mocked him, he did not curse them. When nails pierced his hands, he did not call down angels. Instead, he prayed, "Father, forgive them." This was love that did not break under pressure, love that did not vanish under hatred, love that endured the unendurable. 3. The meaning of the cross. The cross was more than an execution. It was the turning point of history. In human eyes, it looked like defeat. The teacher silenced, the healer killed, the hope extinguished. But in God's eyes, it was victory. The victory of love over sin, mercy over judgment, life over death. Every sin, every failure, every wound of humanity was carried upon that cross. The prophet Isaiah had written centuries earlier, "He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed." This was not abstract theology. This was reality. In that moment, Jesus bore the weight of the world, not because he had to, but because love chose to. 4. The scandal of grace. The cross was scandalous. How could God's Son die like a criminal? How could holiness hang on cursed wood? How could the author of life taste death? Yet this was precisely the beauty of it. Jesus did not save the world with power, but with weakness. He did not conquer through armies, but through sacrifice. He did not demand his followers die for him. He died for them. This turned the world upside down. Strength was redefined. Greatness was redefined. Love was redefined. 5. The cross as a mirror. When people looked at the cross, they saw more than wood and nails. They saw themselves. The pride that led to betrayal. The fear that led to denial. The cruelty that mocked the innocent. The indifference that washed hands of guilt. All of humanity's flaws were there. And yet, above them all, love shone brighter. The cross became a mirror of human sin, and at the same time, a window into divine love. 6. The power of forgiveness. The most beautiful words spoken from the cross were these: "Father, forgive them." Forgiveness, not revenge. Mercy, not wrath. Compassion, not condemnation. Who else could say such words in such a moment? Who else could love not only friends but enemies, executioners, and betrayers? This was not love that excused sin, but love that overcame it. Forgiveness that reached into the darkest corners of the human heart. 7. The cross as transformation. From that moment, the cross was no longer a symbol of shame. It became a symbol of hope. The very instrument of death became the sign of life. The curse became blessing. The defeat became triumph. This transformation spread across the world. Disciples who once fled in fear now proclaimed boldly, "We preach Christ crucified." To the world, it seemed foolishness. To believers, it was the power of God. 8. The depth of love. What makes the cross the ultimate action of love is this: it was voluntary. Jesus said, "No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord." It was sacrificial. He gave not money, not possessions, but his very life. It was substitutionary. He stood in the place of sinners, taking the punishment they deserved. It was victorious. By dying, he destroyed death. By surrendering, he conquered. There is no greater love. 9. What the cross teaches us. The cross does not only save, it teaches. It teaches us that true love costs, that forgiveness requires sacrifice, that to follow Jesus is to carry our own cross, to deny self, to serve others, to lay down pride, to love even when it hurts. The cross is not comfortable, it is not easy, but it is beautiful, because in the cross, we find the heart of God laid bare. 10. The cross today. Even 2,000 years later, the cross stands tall. In cathedrals and villages, in cities and deserts, on necklaces and in paintings, the cross continues to proclaim the message of Jesus. This is how much I love you. And whenever someone forgives instead of retaliates, whenever someone serves instead of demands, whenever someone sacrifices for the sake of another, the echo of the cross is heard again. The cross is not only history, it is present. It is love in action, yesterday, today, and forever. Thus, the most beautiful message of Jesus, love, finds its fullest expression in the cross. Words became flesh, and flesh became sacrifice. Love came down from heaven, and love stretched out its arms on wood, embracing the whole world. In the cross, we see not only what God did, but who God is. Love. How the message changed the world. When we step back and look at history, it is astonishing to realize how the message of Jesus did not remain confined to the hills of Galilee or the dusty streets of Jerusalem. His words, carried by his followers, moved across empires, transcended cultures, and ultimately reshaped civilizations. What began as the voice of one man, seemingly powerless against Rome and the religious elite, became the most transformative message humanity has ever encountered. At its heart was something radically simple yet infinitely profound. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. It was this love-centered ethic that shook the ancient world and planted seeds that would grow into movements of compassion, justice, and hope. 1. The first-century ripple. The immediate impact of Jesus' message could be seen in the lives of his disciples. These men and women, once ordinary fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts, were transformed into bold witnesses. They spread the good news that God had entered human history in the person of Jesus, and that his death and resurrection brought life to all. The Roman world was harsh, life was cheap, slavery was rampant, gladiatorial games entertained crowds with death. The weak, the poor, the sick, the abandoned were often left to die without dignity. Into this reality came a movement that said, every person is made in the image of God, every soul matters, the last shall be first. The earliest Christians, often persecuted, became known for their radical charity. They rescued abandoned infants, cared for the sick during plagues when even doctors fled, and treated slaves and masters as equals within the fellowship of believers. In the face of hostility, their love became their most powerful testimony. 2. Compassion that outlived empires. The empires of the world rose and fell, but the compassion born from Jesus' teaching remained. Hospitals, orphanages, and schools, institutions that today we take for granted, find their roots in the Christian mission to care for the vulnerable. By the 4th century, after centuries of persecution, the cross became a symbol not of shame but of hope, even embraced by emperors. Yet more important than political power was the enduring ethic: love the least, serve the poor, forgive your enemies. This ethic spread beyond the Mediterranean. Missionaries carried the message across continents. Where it was embraced, it inspired cultural transformation. Literacy, education, and care for the marginalized were often tied to the effort to share Jesus' words. His message was not just spoken from pulpits, it was lived out in hospitals, in acts of mercy, in movements for justice. 3. A new understanding of human worth. Before Jesus, few cultures spoke of universal dignity. Worth was tied to status, wealth, or power. But the message of Christ declared that the peasant, the widow, the slave, and the child all bore the same immeasurable value in God's sight. This concept eventually influenced laws, governments, and human rights movements. Even in times when institutions failed to live up to these ideals, the foundation remained. Abolitionists, reformers, and peacemakers often drew their strength from the words of Jesus. His Sermon on the Mount, calling for mercy, humility, and peacemaking, was quoted by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. as they sought justice in their own time. 4. Transforming inner worlds. Yet the change was not only societal. The most beautiful impact of Jesus' message has always been at the level of the individual heart. People burdened by guilt found forgiveness. Those paralyzed by fear found courage. The broken found healing. Across centuries, countless men and women have testified, "I once was lost, but now am found." From Augustine in the 4th century to ordinary believers in every corner of the globe today, the story repeats itself. Jesus' words about love, grace, and new life continue to awaken hope in people who thought their story was over. 5. A message that crosses borders. What is perhaps most remarkable is how the message of Jesus is not bound to one culture, language, or nation. It resonates in cathedrals and in huts, in whispered prayers of the persecuted, and in songs sung by millions. Unlike many philosophies tied to specific traditions, the teachings of Christ speak universally. Love, forgiveness, humility, and hope are not confined by geography. They are as meaningful to a farmer in Africa as to a student in Europe, as relevant to a refugee as to a CEO. Wherever people long for peace, purpose, and reconciliation, the voice of Jesus finds a home. 6. Enduring power in a fragile world. Today, centuries after his death, billions still turn to his words. In an age of technology, division, and uncertainty, his message remains a compass. Love one another as I have loved you. No empire, ideology, or modern philosophy has surpassed the simplicity and depth of those words. And the ripple continues. Every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, every step toward justice inspired by his teaching becomes part of that great wave that started with one man standing in Galilee, declaring the kingdom of God. The most beautiful message from Jesus was not only spoken, it was lived. And because it was lived, it changed the world. What it means for us today. The message of Jesus is not just an echo from the past, nor a philosophy to be studied from a distance. It is alive. It speaks to the anxieties of modern life, to the wounds of our generation, and to the longings of every human heart. If it could transform empires and shape civilizations, imagine what it can do in our personal lives today. 1. In a world of noise, his voice brings clarity. We live in an age of constant noise. Our phones buzz with notifications. News cycles bombard us with fear and division. Social media amplifies anger and comparison. In the middle of this endless noise, Jesus' words rise with clarity. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. These are not abstract promises, they are invitations. For the tired soul, his message is like cool water in a desert. He reminds us that our worth is not measured by likes, money, or success, but by being loved children of God. 2. In a world of division, his message brings unity. Everywhere we turn, we see division, political, racial, economic, cultural. Walls are built between people. Trust is scarce. But Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." The beautiful message of Jesus is not about choosing sides in earthly conflicts, but about rising above them with love. When we forgive instead of retaliate, when we listen instead of condemn, we become carriers of his peace. In a polarized world, living out his teaching is a radical act of unity. 3. In a world of fear, his love casts out darkness. Fear is everywhere. Fear of the future, of failure, of rejection, of loss. But Jesus' message of love is stronger than fear. He said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me." The most beautiful truth is that we are never alone. Even in suffering, even in uncertainty, he is present. His love brings courage to face the unknown and assurance that death itself has been conquered. 4. In a world of success and emptiness, his message brings purpose. Many chase success, wealth, and recognition. Yet how often do we hear stories of people who seem to have it all and still feel empty? Jesus turned the world's values upside down. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? His message tells us that true life is found not in possessions, but in love, not in power, but in service, not in fame, but in faithfulness. The purpose we long for is not out there somewhere. It is already here, in the way we love God and love people each day. 5. For the broken, his words bring healing. All of us carry wounds, regrets, mistakes, shame. Sometimes the world tells us we are defined by our failures, but Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." These words, spoken to a woman caught in sin, still echo today. They remind us that we are never too far gone for forgiveness. The message of Jesus is not condemnation, but restoration. Where the world points fingers, he opens his arms. 6. For the lonely, his presence brings belonging. We live in one of the most connected yet loneliest generations. Behind screens and crowded schedules, many feel unseen and unknown. Jesus' message is deeply personal. I am with you always, to the very end of the age. No matter who abandons us, no matter how misunderstood we feel, his promise remains. In him, we find belonging that no rejection can erase. 7. Living his message today. The most beautiful part is that his message is not meant to remain only in words. It is meant to be lived. Every time we forgive, we echo his forgiveness. Every time we choose kindness over cruelty, we mirror his love. Every time we lift up the hurting, we continue his mission. Imagine if more of us lived this way. Workplaces filled with honesty and care, families marked by forgiveness, communities united by compassion. The message of Jesus is not only about eternal hope, but about transforming the present. 8. A hope that endures. Trends will fade, technologies will become obsolete, empires will rise and fall, but the message of Jesus endures. Why? Because it speaks to what never changes, the human heart's deepest need for love, meaning, and hope. His words are not chained to time or culture. They were true 2,000 years ago, and they remain true today. Love one another as I have loved you. So what does it mean for us today? It means we are invited, not to admire his message from afar, but to step into it, to live it, and to let it reshape our lives. The most beautiful message of Jesus is not simply about what he said, but about what he still says. To you, to me, to all of us, right now. The eternal message. As we reach the end of this reflection, one truth stands out. Kingdoms fall, cultures shift, and generations pass away, but the message of Jesus remains unshaken. It is the eternal melody woven into the story of humanity, whispering to the broken, calling to the lost, comforting the weary, and strengthening the faithful. 2,000 years have come and gone since he walked the earth, yet his words are as fresh today as the moment they were spoken. They do not age, they do not fade. They live because they are more than human wisdom. They are divine truth. 1. A message that transcends time. Think of how many voices throughout history once claimed power or influence. Emperors, generals, philosophers, all had their day. Yet their words are now confined to dusty books or forgotten ruins. But the words of Jesus continue to echo in hearts across the globe. Why? because they touch something eternal within us. They speak to the human longing for love that never ends, for forgiveness that runs deeper than our failures, for hope that outlasts even death. His message is eternal because it is not bound to history, it is bound to God Himself. 2. A message for every soul. This eternal message is not reserved for saints or scholars. It is not locked behind rituals or hidden in temples. It is offered freely to every soul, from the child who whispers a prayer at bedtime to the elder who looks back on a lifetime of joys and regrets. It is for the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless, the celebrated and the forgotten. Wherever there is a heart searching for truth, the voice of Jesus speaks. Come to me. 3. A message written in love. At its core, the eternal message is not about rules, not about fear, not about religion as a system. It is about love. A love that does not waver when we stumble. A love that does not withdraw when we doubt. A love that endured the cross and conquered the grave. This is why it is beautiful beyond compare, because it is not just spoken, it is proven. On Calvary, love was not an idea. It became flesh, blood, and sacrifice. And because of that, no force in heaven or on earth can erase it. 4. A message that calls us forward. The eternal message of Jesus is not only comfort for our wounds, it is also a call. It invites us to rise above selfishness, to embrace forgiveness, to walk in compassion, to bring light into dark places. Every generation has its challenges, its fears, its divisions, and every generation must decide whether to follow the way of anger, greed, and pride, or the way of love. The eternal message is a compass pointing us to the latter, reminding us that though the world changes, love remains the truest path. 5. A final word. So what is the most beautiful message from Jesus? It is this: you are loved, you are forgiven, you are never alone, and you are called to love others as I have loved you. Simple enough for a child to understand, yet deep enough to guide a lifetime. And so, His message does not end with these words. It continues with you. Every act of kindness you choose, every moment of forgiveness you extend, every step of faith you take carries that eternal message into the world. Empires will fade, memories will blur, but the love of Jesus will remain. It is eternal, unchanging, and waiting for you to receive it. This is the most beautiful message, and it is for you today and forever.